Okay, today we're going to try to finish the book of Luke. This is July 22nd, 2024. I have not been able to do any videos for a couple of weeks now because I haven't been here. I haven't been where my equipment is. So today I'm going to try to finish the Gospel of Luke. There's only 3 chapters, but they're long chapters, so there's a lot of reading to do, and so we'll see if we can get this done. But that's the plan, at least. I'd like to finish the Gospel of Luke, and so we can finally move on. We're starting in Luke 22. Now the feast of unleavened bread, called the Passover, was approaching. And the chief priests and the teachers of the law were looking for some way to get rid of Jesus, for they were afraid of the people. Then Satan entered Judas, called Iscariot, one of the 12. And Judas went to the chief priests and the officers of the temple guard, and discussed with them how he might betray Jesus. They were delighted, and agreed to give him money. He consented and watched for an opportunity to hand Jesus over to them when no crowd was present. So that is specifically what he was hired to do. Find a time and a place to allow them to arrest Jesus without stirring up a riot in the crowd. Then came the day of unleavened bread, on which the Passover lamb had to be sacrificed. Jesus sent Peter and John, saying, "Go and make preparations for us to eat the Passover." "Where do you want us to prepare for it?" they asked. He replied, "As you enter the city, a man carrying a jar of water will meet you." This would have been a fairly unusual sight, since women usually carried water jars. So this would be pretty distinctive for them to spot this individual. It may even have been a prearranged signal between Jesus and this guy. Who knows? We don't know. "Follow him to the house that he enters, and say to the owner of the house," which I guess is not the guy carrying the water, "The teacher asks, 'Where is the guest room where I may eat the Passover with my disciples?' He will show you a large upper room, all furnished. Make preparations there." I'm assuming that Jesus had this arrangement set up with the owner of this house already. But I don't know. None of the Gospels actually clarify that, but it seems like it. They left and found things just as Jesus had told them. So they prepared the Passover. When the hour came, Jesus and his apostles reclined at the table. Remember, they had a table that would have been close to the floor. They were all kind of leaning on, while lying on their hips, basically. I have a hard time imagining this as being comfortable. I could see it. I could see doing that if you're now these were probably younger men. Jesus himself apparently started his ministry at age 30. His disciples are probably mostly younger than him, so they probably are young men. And man, I can't imagine this being a comfortable eating position for if you're anything over 30. I don't know how they did it in their culture. I don't know if the old people did that or not, but I can barely see myself doing that, let alone someone older than me. Anyway, he said to them, "I have eagerly desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer. For I tell you, I will not eat it again until it finds fulfillment in the kingdom of God." After taking the cup, he gave thanks and said, "Take this and divide it among you. For I tell you, I will not drink of the fruit of the vine again until the kingdom of God comes." And he took bread, gave thanks and broke it, and gave it to them, saying, "This is my body given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." The way that Luke words this is very similar to the way that Paul words this in 1 Corinthians. Paul has an account of the crucifixion, or this Passover, the communion, in 1 Corinthians chapter 11. It's recorded in all of the Gospels, but Luke's version of it is more similar to Paul's phraseology in 1 Corinthians 11, which makes sense because Luke was a longtime companion with Paul. In the same way, after the supper, they had several courses during their supper. So he blessed the cup to begin with, and then after the supper, he took the cup again, saying, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood, which is poured out for you. But the hand of him who is going to betray me is with mine on the table. The Son of Man will go just as it has been decreed, but woe to that man who betrays him." Then they began to question amongst themselves which of them it might be who would do this. Also, a dispute arose among them as to which of them was considered to be greatest. They are still thinking in terms of them sitting on thrones, ruling the world with Jesus in his kingdom, which they think is going to happen. They think he's going to kick the Romans out and become king and take up residence in some palace in Jerusalem that they're going to build, apparently. And they still think that. Jesus said to them, "The kings of the Gentiles lord it over them, and those who exercise authority over them call themselves benefactors. But you are not to be like that." Now, he's had this conversation with them before. The other Gospels put this conversation on the way to Jerusalem. Apparently, according to Luke, they had this conversation again, even here in the upper room. But you are not to be like that. Instead, the greatest among you should be like the youngest, and the one who rules like the one who serves. For who is greater, the one who is at the table or the one who serves? Is not the one who is at the table? But I am among you as one who serves. So Jesus, the greatest of all, is willingly taking on the role of a servant. You are those who have stood by me in my trials, and I confer on you a kingdom just as my Father conferred one on me, so that you may eat and drink at my table in my kingdom and sit on thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. So they're going to do this someday. The kingdom that he's come to establish will happen. It will not be the kind of kingdom that they have in mind at this moment in time, however. Simon, Simon, Satan has asked to sift you, and the Greek here for that word "you" is plural, so he's talking about all of them here. He's talking specifically to Simon, the leader, the oldest, probably the oldest, but the leader. He's talking about them all, because the "you" in the Greek here, it says in the footnotes, is plural. He's asked to sift you as wheat. But I have prayed for you, Simon, that your faith may not fail. And when you have turned back, and I believe here that you may be singular, although I don't have a footnote saying that, so strengthen your brothers. So Satan wants all of them. He's going to get Simon briefly, but he's going to come back, and Jesus is saying that he will. But he replied, "Lord, I'm ready to go with you to prison and to death." Jesus answered, "I tell you, Peter, before the rooster crows today, you will deny 3 times that you know me." So Peter is not ready to go with Jesus to prison and death. Someday he will be. Today he is not. Then Jesus asked them, "When I sent you without purse, bag, or sandals, did you lack anything?" "Nothing," they answered. He said to them, "But now if you have a purse, take it. If you have a purse, take it, and also a bag. And if you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one. It is written, and he was numbered with the transgressors. And I tell you that this must be fulfilled in me. Yes, what is written about me is reaching its fulfillment." The disciples said, "See, Lord, here are 2 swords." So they have swords already. "That's enough," he replied. I think when he says that's enough, he's not saying it in the sense of that's enough swords. He's saying, like, that's enough of this conversation. Let's be finished. Let's move on. You're not getting what I'm telling you about being a servant and not a ruler, so let's just continue on and we'll move on. Jesus went out as usual to the Mount of Olives, and his disciples followed him. On reaching the place, he said to them, "Pray that you will not fall into temptation." He withdrew about a stone's throw beyond them, and he knelt down and prayed, "Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me. Yet not my will, but yours be done." An angel from heaven appeared to him and strengthened him. And being in anguish, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat was like drops of blood falling to the ground. There's a footnote down here saying some early manuscripts do not have verses 43 and 44. When he rose from prayer and went back to the disciples, that's a unique detail to Luke. But whether or not it was there to begin with, it's hard to say. When he rose, probably. It might have been removed from some manuscripts because it was not in the other Gospels, and some of the early copiers may not have known what to make of that verse, so they may have removed it. That's one of the things we just don't really know. That's why it helps to have a variety of copies so we can see some of these differences. We can be assured that the text is as it was. Now, again, going all the way back to the very first edition of these books, we can't do that. But there is no... We have enough information available to us to be certain of the content of these books, these letters, even if we can't actually reconstruct the very, very first copies. That's what we call the autograph. The first copies, the actual first editions of these letters and books, are called the autographs. And we don't have those. Those are gone. Those have long been gone. And we can't quite go all the way back to reconstructing those as they existed when the hand of the original writer put down its pen and was finished with it. But we can come very close. When he rose from prayer and went back to the disciples, he found them asleep, exhausted from sorrow. This is the only gospel that includes that detail about sorrow. That's what they were. The other gospels just say they were tired. It was late, They had just eaten the big Passover meal. It was late at night. They were heavy with sleep. Here, Luke adds the detail that they were exhausted from sorrow. Why are you? So again, as has been common in Luke, he's trying to soften some of the more egregious mess-ups of the apostles during the gospel. Why are you sleeping? He asked them. Get up and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. While he was still speaking, a crowd came up. So we know from the other gospels that Jesus went back and forth 3 times. Luke doesn't include that. He just says he went to pray and then this happened. While he was still speaking, a crowd came up. And the man who was called Judas, one of the 12, was leading them. He approached Jesus to kiss him, but Jesus asked him, Judas, are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss? When Jesus' followers saw what was going to happen, they said, Lord, should we strike with our swords? And one of them did strike the servant of the high priest, cutting off his right ear. He was probably aiming for his head, probably trying to cut off his head and got his ear instead. Just like the shooter was trying to blow up Donald Trump's head a couple of weeks ago and got his ear, his right ear to be specific. But Jesus answered, no more of this. Now we know from John that this servant was Peter, and we also know the name of that this apostle was Peter, and we also know the name of the servant of the high priest. The other gospels don't mention that. But they do say this happened, they just don't identify who did it. But Jesus answered, no more of this, and he touched the man's ear and healed him. That's a detail, again, that's unique to Luke. And I think it goes in with Luke's theme overall in both Luke and Acts to show how nonviolent and innocent Jesus and Paul and the Christians really are. Then Jesus said to the chief priests, the officers, the temple guard, and the elders who had come for him, am I leading a rebellion that you have come with swords and clubs? Every day I was with you in the temple courts, and you did not lay a hand on me. But this is your hour when darkness reigns. Then seizing him, they led him away and took him into the house of the high priest. Peter followed at a distance. But when they had kindled a fire in the middle of the courtyard and had sat down together, Peter sat down with them. A servant girl saw him seated there in the firelight. She looked closely at him and said, this man was with them. But he denied it. Woman, I don't know him, he said. A little later, someone else saw him and said, You also are one of them." "Man, I am not," Peter replied. About an hour later, another asserted, "Certainly this fellow was with him, for he is a Galilean." We read from the other Gospels that his accent was giving him away. This is not Galilee. This is Jerusalem. This is Judea. So he's an outsider here in that regard. So his accent's giving him away. So he has to be part of their number, right? Peter replied, "Man, I don't know what you're talking about." Just as he was speaking, the rooster crowed. The Lord turned and looked straight at Peter. So there must have been some sort of window or open doorway from where Jesus was to where Peter was. Peter apparently was in the courtyard somewhere in the complex of this house, and then Jesus was in one of the rooms on trial, and there must have been an open window or something. Then Peter, or he was on the way of being moved from one place to another, I don't really know, it doesn't say. Somehow or another there was an unbroken line of sight between Jesus and Peter at this point. Then Peter remembered the word the Lord had spoken to him. "Before the rooster crows today, you will disown me 3 times. And he went outside and wept bitterly.